Thank you for registering to participate in an MCAP American Government Test Development activity. We are excited to be able to meet and learn with you during this process. The purpose of this video is to provide general overviews of the state of social studies education in Maryland and the Maryland Government Assessment Development process. By having this common foundation, it will enable us to jump right into our virtual test development review. First, social studies education in Maryland. Take a moment to read the MSDE Social Studies Vision Statement. As you can see, one of the prime goals of the MSDE Social Studies is to make sure that the students can engage in skills that are necessary in being able to participate in our democracy. The vision, coupled with our mission of the MSDE Social Studies, is to help build capacity for high-quality social studies in the state of Maryland. To help with the mission and vision, we have our frameworks. As you can see in this flowchart, our social studies frameworks are currently undergoing a revision process, with Government, Modern World, and U.S. History 8 being the first frameworks to be updated, released in 2018. Currently, the next round of frameworks are being released with high school U.S. History and all levels of elementary social studies. The last round of framework updates will be grades 6 and 7. The updates in these frameworks show the instructional shift to inquiry-based instruction in social studies education. You will notice the frameworks are aligned in the design to help with the inquiry instruction. Soon, all students will start their inquiry-based social studies education in early elementary school. That thinking will be aligned in all of their social studies courses throughout their academic careers. It is also important to note that there are two assessed areas in social studies in Maryland. Once in the middle school grade band, with the students being assessed in grade 8. And the second time in American government. The instructional shift currently seen in our frameworks was driven by the C3 framework published by NCSS in 2013. The C3 framework helped to inform and restructure the Maryland State Social Studies Standard 6, Skills and Processes. The update to this standard was adopted by Maryland in 2015, which then initiated the updates to all of the frameworks as previously shared. The C3 framework covers the 4 dimensions of inquiry instruction. Begins with developing a question and planning inquiries. Dimension 2 deals with applying disciplinary tools and concepts to those inquiries. Dimension 3 deals with evaluating sources and using evidence. And then ultimately, it ends in Dimension 4 with communicating conclusions and taking informed action. In Maryland, we have adapted the use of the inquiry arc. This inquiry arc mirrors the 4 dimensions of the C3 framework. It helps to unify the approach to social studies instruction. If you want to learn more about the 6.0 skills and processes and the inquiry arc, please navigate to the Maryland Public Schools Social Studies website to learn more. We have tools and even a webinar about this subject. Now, let's discuss the test review process. Test development is a collaborative process involving many stakeholders. It begins with the vendor submitting an item order to MSDE based upon the amount of items that are in the item bank. and where any potential gaps may be. From this step, stimuli are selected to be placed on the assessment. These stimuli are reviewed by Maryland teachers for alignment to the assessment limits and to make sure that they are accessible for all students. Items are then written to that stimuli, and also non-stimuli-based items are written too. In government, we only use Maryland teachers to write our items. After the items are written, they are reviewed by the Content Review Committee to make sure they are aligned to the assessment limits and ultimately accessible for all students. The items are then field tested. Constructed response items are scored, but first a Maryland Range Finding Committee determines the score ranges for each CR. This information is then sent to be scored. All of the data from the field tested items are reviewed to make sure that it is statistically a good item and not performing better with one group over another. Items are then rested for a year and then eventually placed on an operational assessment. In Maryland, we take pride knowing that we have teacher involvement in so much of the test development process. Having this teacher involvement allows us to make sure the assessment is connected to the instruction students are receiving in their classrooms. These yellow ovals represent all the steps of teacher involvement. It will not be until the test goes operational that a student will be held accountable for the items. And this green oval represents that first time the student will be held accountable in their scores for that item. While the previous process is used for SRs, CRs, and TEIs, the EBUS is developed using a slightly different process. While it follows the elements of the previous flowchart, this is not as clean of a process like the rest of development. There is a lot of back and forth to get a good question and sources that provide enough evidence to create SRs and the ECR item. As in the last flowchart, the yellow represents the teacher involvement in the development process, while the green is when the student is being held accountable for their score. Let's quickly review the item types students will encounter on the MCAP government assessment. In 2019, the number of sessions were shortened to help promote the goal of MCAP in reducing testing times. This is the current layout of the assessment. You can see that the test still has the traditional SRs and BCRs, as well as the newer item types with TEIs and EBUS. We will quickly look at each of these item types. All of the examples that you are going to see in this video clip are from the practice test. If you would like to review the items in more depth or interact with the items in the platform, please visit the practice test. Selected response items. This item, often referred to as a multiple choice question, has a question, a correct answer choice, and 3 distractors. This is another example of a selected response item, but this example has a stimulus attached for the students to use in answering the question. As stated before, the stimuli used in the selected response items are vetted through the Stimuli Review Committee, then written to by our item writers. Brief constructed response items, or BCRs, can be with or without a stimulus. Here, students will be asked 3 bullets of information, normally following the format of bullet 1, directly asking for information or an explanation. Bullet 2, followed by a higher cognitive level question. And ultimately, bullet 3, reminding students to include details and examples to support your answer. Here's the 4-point rubric used with our BCRs. Ultimately, in order to get a score of a 4, a student must address all aspects of the question. Both bullets are answered with multiple details. Demonstrates comprehensive government knowledge. Minimal misconceptions do not interfere with understanding. And when appropriate, applies evidence correctly from the stimulus to support the response. So you'll see these are the 3 bullets from that level 4, showing that ultimately the student demonstrates comprehensive understanding of the content, question, and or problem. And the response is insightful and completely integrates knowledge to thoroughly answer the question. Technology-enhanced items, or TEIs, allow students to engage with assessment content and demonstrate their understanding in new ways. Currently, the Social Studies Assessment Program uses 3 main types of TEIs. Drag and drops work well to complete tables, graphic organizers, charts, timelines, order of events. Here are 2 examples of drag and drop items. In this example, students have to click on the answer choices and drag it up to the box above. In the second example, still a drag and drop, students must click on the box with the correct answers and drag them over to the correct boxes. Sample hotspots or hot text. With hotspots, students will have to select one or more areas or hotspots on some type of graphic. So the graphic could be a map, a graph, a chart, an image. Or hot text works very similar. A student can be given a text where they must select the links, the hot text. You can see here the hot text is in this bluish shade. In this example, students must click on the phrase that exemplifies the principle of popular sovereignty. So when they click on it, it will change to be to a different color, and that's how the student will know that their answer choice is locked in. Click to select. Click to select items work well for lists. In this example of the click to select, the student must choose 2 types of government that are generally considered to be most efficient in the decision-making process. Okay, to do so, they have to move their cursor to the boxes and then click on the correct answer choice. And it will change color once it's clicked and locked in. TEI replacement item. On a paper form, TEIs are not possible. So on these forms, you will notice the replacement items or paper variants. Here you will see the replacement item from the click to select item that was previously shown. Here is an example of an eBus as it is displayed on the testing platform. The platform is shown in a split screen. On the left side, the students can navigate between the Introduction and Background tab and Source tabs. Please note the arrow to help expand to full screen mode of all of the sources. On the right side, students can navigate to each selected response and constructed response item at the end. Here is the 5-point rubric used for our ECR in the eBus item. This is our 5-point skill-based rubric. Ultimately, in order to get a score of a 5, a student must, or the response must demonstrate substantial understanding of the content, question, and or problem. The response is insightful and completely integrates knowledge to thoroughly answer the question. Ultimately, the student must develop a comprehensive claim to address the compelling question, support the claim with full synthesis, citing evidence from all appropriate sources, and connection to that claim is substantial. And there could be minor misconceptions, but they do not interfere with the understanding. If you want to explore and interact with the scoring of the BCR and the EBUS items, please navigate to itempora.org. This is where released items are housed for the MCAP programs. It will also be the future home to the government-released items that were once found on MDK-12. Currently, there are 2 released BCRs and an EBUS set that have been uploaded with scored student responses and annotations that provide scoring rationales. If you are familiar with the American government scoring, take some time to explore the released Social Studies 8 EBUS item. Some key differences that you will notice: the EBUS item has all CRs, that there are no SRs attached to the EBUS, like in government. The written response at the end is a BCR and is scored with a 4-point rubric. However, the rubric is a skill-based rubric that is aligned to the 5-point rubric that American government students use. And finally, you will also notice that the CRs are 2 points that lead up to that extended response, or that brief constructed response, excuse me, in Social Studies 8. In closing, here's the timeline that the American government assessment has been following. You can see how this merges the journey of the updates in the Maryland Social Studies program and the alignment to the assessment limits. Thank you. We again are excited to be able to meet and learn with you during this process. See you soon.